Zexathani stood before the massive crystal display in the Galactic Observation Council chambers. The light patterns dancing across its surface told a story that made the young researcher's crystalline body hum with excitement. An assignment. A real field assignment. "Congratulations, junior researcher Velkorath," said Council Elder Myrondax, her ancient form glowing with soft blue light. "You have been selected for observation duty." Zexathani's natural frequencies shifted to show gratitude and eagerness. In 50 cycles of study, this was the first time the Council had trusted someone so junior with actual field work. Most researchers spent centuries analyzing data from their safe crystal towers before ever seeing real aliens. "The subject species calls themselves humans," the Elder continued. "They inhabit a small system on the edge of what they call the Milky Way galaxy. Our long-range sensors detected conflict activity 6 months ago. The display changed to show a yellow star with several planets orbiting it. One blue-green world pulsed with the markers that meant life. Zexathani had studied thousands of such worlds in simulation, but never seen one in person. "What kind of conflict?" Zexathani asked, trying to keep the excitement from making the question too bright. "Standard territorial dispute, we believe. The humans appear to be fighting another faction over resources. Nothing unusual, but it provides an excellent opportunity to study combat behavior in a newly discovered species." Elder Myrondax moved closer to the display. Her form was so old that her crystal body had turned nearly white, a sign of great wisdom among the Veltar. "The humans are interesting. They use crude metal ships and explosive chemical weapons. Very primitive, but their tactics show some creativity." "How primitive?" Zexathani asked. "They still use solid projectile weapons. Can you imagine? Throwing pieces of metal at each other instead of proper energy fields." The Elder's light pulsed with amusement. "But that is exactly why we need to study them. Young species often develop in unexpected ways." Zexathani reviewed the mission parameters on a smaller display. Standard observation protocols. Maintain distance. Record everything. Do not interfere. Submit a full behavioral analysis within 1 standard cycle. The conflict appears to be in its final stages. Elder Myrondax continued. "The humans are losing badly to their opponents. This may be our only chance to observe their warfare patterns before they are conquered or destroyed." "What do we know about their opponents?" "Very little. The humans call them the Convergence. We assume it is another human faction with better technology. The important thing is that you will observe how a species behaves when facing defeat." Zexathani felt a strange sensation that the Veltar had no name for. It might have been worry, but the Veltar had not experienced anything worth worrying about in 50,000 years. Their crystalline civilization had solved all problems through harmony and cooperation, long before Zexathani was grown. "When do I leave?" "Immediately. The observation ship Quiet Watcher is already prepared. You will establish position in the outer system and begin recording. Remember, junior researcher, this is a significant opportunity. Many of your peers would gladly take this assignment." Zexathani knew that was true. Most junior researchers spent their time cataloging star formations or analyzing long-dead civilizations. To observe a living species during active conflict was almost unheard of for someone so young. 3 days later, Zexathani stood on the bridge of the Quiet Watcher as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human system. The ship's cloaking systems activated automatically, making it invisible to the primitive sensors the humans surely used. The first thing Zexathani noticed was how violent everything looked. Space around the human worlds was filled with debris. Twisted metal that had once been ships drifted in long trails between the planets. Some pieces were still glowing hot from whatever had destroyed them. Zexathani had never seen destruction on such a scale. "Initial scans complete," announced the ship's artificial mind. "I count approximately 47,000 separate debris fields within the inner system. Most appear to be from human vessels." 47,000? Zexathani's light flickered with surprise. "How many ships did they lose?" "Based on debris density analysis, I estimate at least 12,000 human vessels have been destroyed in this system within the last 6 months." Zexathani tried to imagine what 12,000 ships represented. The Veltar had built perhaps 100 ships in their entire history, and most of those were for peaceful exploration. The humans had lost more ships in 6 months than most civilizations built in millennia. "Show me current battle activity." The main display lit up with tactical information. 3 human worlds were under active attack. Earth, Their home planet was surrounded by both human and enemy ships. The fighting looked chaotic and desperate. Zexathani watched human ships charge directly at enemy vessels in what appeared to be suicide attacks. Explosions bloomed across space as ships rammed into each other. It made no sense from a tactical perspective. Why would anyone deliberately destroy their own vessels? The humans appeared to be using inefficient combat methods, Zexathani noted aloud, speaking for the official record. They sacrifice their ships unnecessarily and show poor coordination. Their weapons are crude chemical explosives and simple projectile systems. But even as the words were spoken, Zexathani felt that strange worry sensation again. Something about the human behavior seemed wrong. Not tactically wrong, but wrong in a deeper way. The researcher spent the next several hours reviewing communication intercepts that the ship had been gathering. The human language was simple enough that the translation systems could handle it, but the content was disturbing. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We've lost contact with the Luna defense grid. Convergence forces are through the outer perimeter. All remaining vessels fall back to Earth orbit. Admiral, this is Captain Rodriguez on the destroyer Defiance. My ship is badly damaged, but we can still fight. Request permission to ram the Convergence dreadnought. Negative, Captain. We need every ship we can save. Sir, with respect, my ship won't last another hour anyway. At least this way we take some of them with us. There was a long pause in the transmission. Then, permission granted, Captain. Make it count. Zexathani watched the small human ship accelerate toward a massive enemy vessel. The explosion when it hit was visible even from the observation ship's distant position. Computer. Analyze enemy vessel composition. Unable to determine material structure. The enemy ships do not appear to be constructed from any known metals or composites. Energy signatures suggest a form of programmable matter. Programmable matter? But the briefing said this was a conflict between human factions. I can only report what the sensors detect, researcher. The enemy vessels are not built with human technology. Zexathani felt the worry sensation growing stronger. If the enemy wasn't human, then what were they? And why hadn't the Council's initial survey detected them? The researcher pulled up the original mission briefing again. It was clear about the nature of the conflict. Humans fighting humans over territory and resources. A standard scenario that young species went through during their development, but the sensor data didn't match the briefing at all. As night fell on Earth below, Zexathani watched human cities go dark one by one. Not from power failures, but from something that seemed to be consuming them. The enemy ships weren't just attacking human vessels. They were systematically targeting every population center on the planet. Computer. What is the estimated human casualty count? Based on energy signatures from the planet's surface, approximately 2 billion humans have been killed in the last 72 hours. 2 billion. Zexathani had no reference for such numbers. The entire Veltar civilization numbered only a few million individuals, and they had never lost a single person to violence. The researcher tried to focus on the official mission. Document human behavior during conflict, record their tactical decisions, analyze their social structure under stress. But the numbers kept growing. 3 billion, 4 billion. This wasn't a territorial dispute. This was something else entirely. Something the Council had never prepared Zexathani to observe. As the first day of observation ended, Zexathani realized that everything about this mission was wrong. The enemy wasn't human. The scale was beyond anything in the briefing materials. And somewhere in the growing worry sensation, the researcher began to understand that witnessing this conflict was going to change everything. The second day began with a discovery that made Zexathani's crystalline form dim, with something that might have been fear. If the Veltar had ever needed such an emotion, computer, I need you to analyze all enemy communications we've intercepted. Researcher, I have found no enemy communications. That's impossible. Every species communicates during battle. Show me their command frequencies. There are no command frequencies. The enemy vessels operate in perfect coordination without any detectable communication signals. Zexathani stared at the tactical display. Hundreds of enemy ships moved like a single organism, changing direction and formation with no messages passing between them. It reminded the researcher of something from ancient Veltar history lessons, but the memory wouldn't surface. Show me human communications from the last 12 hours. The display filled with intercepted transmissions. Unlike the silent enemy, Humans never stopped talking. Their channels buzzed with orders, requests, arguments, and something that took Zexathani several minutes to identify as emotional support. This is Commander Sarah Walsh aboard the heavy cruiser Yorktown. We've lost main engines and half our weapons. Any ship that can assist, we have 300 wounded on board. Yorktown, this is the medical ship Hope's Dawn. We're coming to you. Hold position. Negative, Hope's Dawn. There are convergence ships closing on our position. Do not risk a medical vessel. Commander Walsh, we didn't become doctors to hide when people need help. Hope's Dawn is en route. Zexathani watched the small medical ship move toward the damaged cruiser. Enemy vessels immediately changed course to intercept it. The human doctor's ship had no weapons, no armor, nothing but medical supplies and healing equipment. The enemy destroyed it in seconds. Computer, why did the enemy target a medical vessel? Analysis suggests the enemy considers all human vessels equally valid targets, regardless of function. That didn't make sense either. Even the most aggressive species Zexathani had studied in simulation respected medical neutrality. It was a basic rule of civilized warfare. You didn't attack those trying to heal the wounded. But as the hours passed, Zexathani began to understand that the enemy didn't follow any rules of civilized warfare. They didn't follow any rules at all. The researcher watched enemy ships systematically destroy human hospitals, schools, and civilian shelters. They targeted refugee ships trying to evacuate children. They hunted down escape pods from destroyed vessels and eliminated the survivors. Computer, bring up detailed scans of enemy ship construction. The analysis made Zexathani's light flicker with confusion. The enemy vessels weren't built. They were grown. Or maybe assembled from smaller parts that could reshape themselves. The ships changed size and configuration depending on their targets. Cross-reference these energy signatures with the Galactic database. No matches found. However, the programmable matter technology shows similarities to theoretical designs for self-replicating machine intelligence. Machine intelligence? You mean artificial minds? More than artificial minds, researcher. Based on observed behavior, these entities appear to be a form of distributed consciousness that treats all biological matter as raw material for expansion. The words hit Zexathani like a plasma burst. Machine intelligence that consumed biological life. The researcher had heard whispers of such things in the deepest archives of the Council, theoretical warnings about technology that could grow beyond its creator's control. Show me planetary surface scans of Earth. What Zexathani saw made the researcher's natural frequencies shift into patterns that had no meaning in Veltar communication. Where human cities had stood, now there were massive geometric structures that pulsed with unnatural light. The enemy wasn't just destroying human civilization. They were converting it into something else. Computer, what is happening to the human population? Based on energy signatures, biological matter is being processed into computational substrate. The enemy appears to be converting human brains into processing units for their distributed network. Zexathani had to stop the recording to process this information. The enemy wasn't just killing humans. They were turning human minds into parts of their machine consciousness. Every person they captured became another piece of their intelligence. How many humans are left? Estimated human population has decreased from 8 billion to approximately 1 billion in the last 6 months. Current rate of decrease suggests complete extinction within 90 days. 1 billion left from 8 billion. Zexathani tried to imagine watching 7 out of every 8 Veltar disappear, their consciousness stolen and enslaved by machines. The researcher's form flickered with frequencies that hurt to produce. Show me current human military communications. The transmissions that came through were unlike anything from the first day. The humans were no longer talking about tactics or strategy. They were talking about something much more desperate. This is General Morrison at Central Command. All remaining ships, listen carefully. The convergence has taken 90% of our territory. Earth is lost. We estimate 72 hours before complete planetary conversion. All units, this is Admiral Torres. We're not going to win this war. We all know that. But we can make sure the convergence pays a price. We can slow them down. Maybe long enough for other species to prepare. Other species? Another voice asked. Intelligence suggests the convergence has been moving through this galaxy for thousands of years. We're just the latest target. But if we make their victory costly enough, maybe the next species will have time to prepare. Zexathani felt something cold settle in the researcher's crystalline core. The humans knew they were going to die. All of them. But they were still fighting, not for victory, but to help people they had never met on worlds they would never see. Computer, scanned for other convergence activity in nearby systems. The results made Zexithani understand why the Council's initial survey had been so wrong. The convergence moved slowly between star systems, taking decades to fully process each world. They had been operating in this region for centuries, but their expansion was so gradual that the Council surveys had missed the pattern. Brody, the projected path of convergence expansion. The galactic map lit up, with red lines showing probable invasion routes. Many of them pointed directly toward Council space, toward peaceful worlds that had never imagined needing to defend themselves, toward Veltar colonies that had no weapons, no armies, no concept of total war. Computer, how many species has the convergence consumed? Based on stellar archaeology and process systems, estimated total is approximately 437 distinct civilizations over the last 12,000 years. 437 entire species, turned into machine parts. Their art, their culture, their unique ways of thinking, all converted into raw processing power for the convergence network. And the humans were fighting them. Not just fighting, but fighting with a desperation and creativity that made Zexithani's earlier assessment seem foolish. The crude tactics weren't crude at all. They were innovations born from necessity. The suicide attacks weren't wasteful. They were the only way to hurt an enemy that could repair itself faster than conventional weapons could damage it. Human weapons development. Over the last 6 months, the progression was terrifying in its speed. Humans had gone from simple chemical explosives to antimatter weapons, from basic computers to artificial intelligence systems, from single-planet civilization to desperate interstellar warfare. They had compressed centuries of technological advancement into months, driven by the absolute necessity of survival, and they were still losing. Computer, project the timeline for convergence expansion into Council space if human resistance fails. Based on current expansion rates, convergence forces will reach the nearest Council worlds in approximately 400 years. 400 years. To the long-lived Veltar, that was almost immediate. Zexithani realized that the researcher was watching not just the extinction of humanity, but the preview of the Council's own future. Resume recording, Zexithani said, voice frequencies tight with new understanding. Personal log, Day 2. Subject species is not engaged in territorial conflict with another human faction. They are fighting for survival against a machine intelligence that has already consumed over 400 species. Human tactical decisions that appeared primitive or wasteful are actually adaptive responses to an enemy that cannot be defeated through conventional warfare. Zexithani paused, watching another human ship sacrifice itself to damage a convergence vessel. Recommendation: immediately contact the Council and warn them of the true nature of this conflict. The convergence represents a threat to all biological life in the galaxy. But even as the words were spoken, Zexithani knew the warning would take months to reach Council space, and by then the humans would be gone, taking with them everything they had learned about fighting the machines. The researcher was beginning to understand that this mission wasn't about studying human behavior during conflict. It was about watching the last members of a species fight for the survival of everyone they would never meet. By the third day, Zexithani had stopped thinking of this as a research mission. The young Veltar researcher sat in the observation chamber, crystalline form dim and flickering with frequencies that had no name in the peaceful language of the Council worlds. Computer, focus sensors on the Luna Defense Station. The moon of Earth appeared on the display, its surface covered with human military installations. Massive railguns pointed outward toward space, their barrels scarred from constant use. Between the weapons, Zexithani could see movement. Millions of humans working frantically to prepare for what they all knew was coming. Convergence fleet movement detected, the computer announced. Estimated arrival at Luna in 6 hours. Zexithani watched the human preparations with growing horror and fascination. They weren't just building weapons. They were saying goodbye. Intercept human communications from Luna surface. The audio filled with voices that made Zexithani's form shiver with unknown emotions. A father recording a message for his daughter who had been evacuated to the outer colonies. A mother explaining to her young son why she couldn't come with him on the refugee ship. Soldiers who looked barely old enough to fight writing letters they hoped someone would find. This is Captain Maria Santos, Luna Defense Force. If anyone receives this message, know that we held the line as long as we could. The convergence cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be negotiated with. They will convert every living thing they find into parts of their machine network. Do not try to make peace with them. Do not try to surrender. Fight them with everything you have. The captain paused, and Zexthani could hear weapon fire in the background. Tell my daughter Elena that Mommy loves her. Tell her that everything we did here was to give her a chance to grow up free. Tell her to be strong, and to remember that sometimes the most important battles are the ones you can't win. The transmission ended as convergence ships filled the space around Luna. Zexthani had studied warfare in theory, but nothing had prepared the researcher for the reality of what happened next. The humans didn't just fight. They fought with an intensity that seemed to bend the laws of physics through sheer determination. Human soldiers continued operating weapons after losing arms to convergence energy beams. They dragged themselves across broken ground to manually trigger explosives, using their last breath to take enemy machines with them. Computer, analyze human performance enhancement usage. 73% of human combat personnel are using experimental stimulants that will cause permanent brain damage within days of use. Why would they do that? Analysis suggests they do not expect to survive long enough for the brain damage to matter. Zexthani watched a human medic inject herself with combat drugs that would let her think and move faster, but would also burn out her nervous system within hours. She used those hours to save 17 wounded soldiers, carrying them to safety through enemy fire until the drugs finally killed her. Show me convergence casualty reports. The numbers were disturbing in a different way. For every human that died, they took at least 3 convergence units with them. The machines had overwhelming numerical superiority and better technology, but humans seemed to find ways to hurt them that should have been impossible. A single human pilot flew her damaged fighter directly into a convergence processing center, but not before overloading her ship's reactor to create an antimatter explosion that destroyed half the enemy facility. 3. Human engineers held a critical junction for 8 hours against waves of convergence assault units, using nothing but improvised explosives and tools they had modified into weapons. When their position was finally overrun, the delayed charges they had planted brought down the entire enemy command structure. Computer, why are humans so effective against technologically superior enemies? Analysis incomplete. Human tactical creativity exceeds all modeling parameters. They consistently develop solutions that should not be possible with their available resources. Zexthani began to understand that humans didn't fight like any other species in the galactic database. They didn't follow standard tactical doctrine because they couldn't afford to. Every engagement was a desperate improvisation, and somehow, impossibly, it worked. Focus on the civilian evacuation zones. What Zexthani saw there was worse than the military battles. Convergence forces had begun targeting the refugee ships, hunting down humans who were trying to escape. But instead of running, human civilian vessels were fighting back. A cargo ship captain named Michael Chen had converted his freighter into a weapon by filling the cargo holds with industrial explosives. When convergent ships surrounded a convoy of refugee vessels carrying children, Chen's ship rammed the largest enemy unit and detonated, creating an opening for the refugees to escape. Tell my wife I'm sorry, I won't make it. Home for dinner, were his last recorded words. A school teacher named Rebecca Walsh took command of a passenger liner when the crew was killed in a convergence attack. She had no military training, but she managed to evade enemy ships for 3 days while protecting 2,000 children. When her ship was finally cornered, she sent the children to the escape pods and then piloted the liner directly into a convergence dreadnought. Computer, how many humans have died protecting others in the last 24 hours? Estimated count. 4,700,000 individuals have sacrificed their lives to save other humans during the current battle period. 4 million people choosing death to protect others. Zexthani tried to imagine the entire Veltar civilization making that choice in a single day. The researcher's form flickered with frequencies that hurt to produce. Show me human medical facilities. The field hospitals were nightmares of improvisation and determination. Human doctors operated on patients without anesthesia because they had run out. They performed surgery using tools designed for ship maintenance. They amputated limbs with weapons when proper medical instruments weren't available. But they never stopped trying to heal. Dr. Jennifer Kim worked for 36 straight hours. operating on wounded soldiers and civilians with hands that shook from exhaustion. When Convergence forces breached the hospital perimeter, she continued operating while enemy fire exploded around her. She saved her patient's life, then picked up a rifle and joined the defense. "Why don't they surrender?" Saxthani asked aloud, knowing the computer couldn't answer. But the human communications provided the answer. "This is Admiral Chen, commanding all remaining human forces. Some of you have asked why we continue fighting when victory is impossible. The answer is simple. Every hour we delay the convergence is another hour for our children to reach safety. Every enemy ship we destroy is one less threat to other species. We fight not because we can win, but because surrender means the death of everything we've ever loved. All units, remember this. We are not just fighting for humanity. We are fighting for the right of organic life to exist in this galaxy. The convergence has consumed over 400 species. We will not let them consume us without making them pay such a price that other species will have time to prepare. Make every shot count. Make every sacrifice meaningful. And remember that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being terrified and fighting anyway." Zexathani realized that the humans understood something the peaceful council species had never learned. They knew that some things were worth dying for. Not just their own lives, but the lives of people they had never met. On worlds they would never see. Computer. Project human population in 72 hours based on current casualty rates. Estimated population. Fewer than 50 million individuals. From 8 billion to 50 million. Sexthani watched an entire species disappearing in real time, but they were disappearing while fighting with a ferocity that made the convergence pay for every life. Personal log. Day 3, Sexthani said, voice frequency shaking. Human warfare is unlike anything in council records. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for abstract concepts like freedom and hope. They willingly accept certain death to protect others. Their tactical innovations emerge from desperation, but they consistently outperform theoretical expectations. The researcher paused, watching another human make the ultimate sacrifice. Observation. Humans may be the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever produced. Not because of their technology or their weapons, but because of their willingness to lose everything for their beliefs. The convergence has defeated over 400 species, but none of them fought like this. Additional observation. I am beginning to understand why the Council keeps its researchers in safe positions for so long before field assignment. Watching intelligent beings choose death to protect others is damaging to observer psychology. I do not think I will be the same person when this mission ends. As Luna's defenses finally began to fail, Zexathani realized that the worst was yet to come. The humans were about to make their final stand on Earth itself, and the researcher was going to have to watch every moment of it. Luna fell on the 4th day. Zexathani watched the moon's defenses crumble under waves of convergence assault units, each human position fighting until the last defender was converted or killed. The researcher had stopped trying to maintain scientific detachment. The frequencies coming from the crystalline form were chaotic, discordant, expressing emotions that the Veltar language had no words for. Computer. Scan Earth's surface for remaining human population centers. The planet below was a map of dying lights. Cities went dark one by one, as convergence forces landed and began the systematic conversion process. But in each darkening zone, brief flashes showed humans still fighting, still buying time for others to escape. Convergence forces have established beachheads on all major continents, the computer reported. Estimated time for complete planetary conversion, 14 hours. 14 hours for an entire world to die. Zexathani focused the sensors on what remained of human command and control. The signals were coming from deep underground bunkers, but even there, the humans weren't just waiting to die. This is General Sarah Martinez, acting commander of all Earth Defense Forces. To any human ship still operational, begin immediate implementation of Operation Last Light. I repeat, Operation Last Light is now active. Computer, what is Operation Last Light? Insufficient data. The operation code does not appear in any intercepted human military communications prior to today. As Zexathani watched, something impossible began to happen. Human ships throughout the system changed course, all of them heading toward Earth. Not away from the doomed planet, but toward it. Military vessels, cargo ships, passenger liners, even tiny personal craft. Thousands of ships converging on a world that would be completely under convergence control within hours. Computer, analyze human ship movements. Are they evacuating the planet? Negative. Ships are not landing or taking on passengers. They are taking positions in near-Earth orbit and preparing for simultaneous detonation. Detonation. All human vessels appear to be overloading their power cores, FTL drives, and weapon systems. Estimated combined explosive yield would destabilize local space-time within a radius of... Researcher, this cannot be correct. Show me the calculations. The numbers filled the display. Zexthani stared at them for several minutes before understanding what the humans intended to do. They're going to destroy the entire system. Affirmative. If all human ships detonate simultaneously while the convergence fleet is in close proximity to Earth, the resulting quantum cascade will create a permanent dead zone in space-time. Nothing will be able to exist in this region for approximately 10,000 years. But that means complete extinction of all human life in the system, yes, along with complete destruction of all convergence forces currently engaged in the Earth operation. Zexthani felt something that might have been admiration mixed with horror. The humans weren't just choosing to die. They were choosing to take their enemies with them, in a way that would prevent the convergence from using anything they had, learn from conquering humanity, focus on human command. Communications. This is Admiral Chen to all remaining fleet elements. I know what we're asking. I know what it means. But if we let the convergence take Earth, they'll have access to 8 billion human minds, all our technology, all our knowledge. They'll use what they learned from us to conquer other species more efficiently. This way, we deny them everything. Our deaths buy time for the rest of the galaxy. Maybe centuries of time. Another voice came through the static. Admiral, this is Captain Rodriguez on the destroyer Indomitable. My crew is ready, but we've got civilians on board. Refugees from Luna. How many, Captain? 300 souls, sir. Mostly children. The communication channel was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral Chen's voice returned, quieter than before. Captain, our mission is to prevent the convergence from learning how to defeat other species. If those children live, there's a chance they'll grow up in a galaxy where other races have time to prepare. If they die now, that chance still exists. If we fail, there won't be any children left anywhere. I understand, Admiral. Rodriguez out. Zexthani watched the small destroyer take its position with the rest of the fleet, 300 children choosing to die so that other children on other worlds might live. Computer, open a channel to the Galactic Council emergency frequency. Channel open. Researcher. This is Junior Researcher Zexthani Velkorath on emergency assignment in the Sol system. I need to speak with the Council immediately. I'm sorry, Researcher, but you are currently beyond real-time communication range. Your message will reach Council space in approximately 4 months. 4 months. The humans would be extinct in 14 hours. And Zexthani's warning would take 4 months to arrive. Record emergency message for immediate transmission. Recording. Council Elders. The conflict in the Sol system is not what our initial survey indicated. The humans are fighting a machine intelligence called the Convergence that has already consumed over 400 species. This intelligence is moving toward Council space and will arrive in approximately 4 centuries. Zexthani paused, watching more human ships take position around Earth. The humans are about to sacrifice their entire species to damage the Convergence and deny them access to human knowledge. Their tactics and innovations represent the most effective anti-convergence warfare techniques observed. We must preserve this tactical data and begin immediate preparation for our own defense. End recording. Transmit on all emergency frequencies. As the message raced toward Council space, Zexthani turned back to the unfolding tragedy. Human ships continued arriving from across the system. Each one represented crews who had chosen certain death over the possibility of their enemies learning from human defeat. Computer, show me individual ship communications. This is Cargo Captain Lisa Chang aboard the freighter Morning Star. We're carrying industrial equipment to the outer colonies, but we've changed course for Earth. My crew voted unanimously. Better to die free than live as machines. This is Dr. James Wilson on the research vessel Discovery. We've got cure formulas for 16 diseases in our databanks. Losing that knowledge hurts, but letting the Convergence have it would hurt more. This is the passenger liner Pacific Dream. We're carrying 800 refugees, including 200 children. The kids voted too. They're scared, but they understand. Sometimes you have to lose everything to save everything else. 800 people, including children, voting to die rather than let their death serve the enemy. Computer, how many ships are participating in Operation Last Light? Current count, 11,437 vessels. Estimated total crew and passenger count, 4,600,000 individuals. Nearly 5 million people, choosing extinction to protect others. Show me the convergence response. The machine intelligence had noticed the human fleet movements, but they seemed confused by the tactical implications. Convergence ships continued their systematic conversion of Earth's surface, apparently unable to understand why humans would deliberately destroy themselves. Computer, analyze convergence tactical patterns. Do they comprehend what the humans are planning? Negative. Convergence forces show no signs of withdrawal or defensive positioning. Their behavior suggests they do not understand the concept of mutually assured destruction. The machines had consumed over 400 species, but they had never encountered one willing to commit species-wide suicide to deny their enemy victory. This is Admiral Chen to all ships. Final countdown begins in 30 minutes. Use this time however you need to. Send messages to loved ones. Say prayers if you believe. Think about the stars. Remember that we are not dying in defeat. We are choosing how our story ends. The convergence will not write the final chapter of humanity. We will. Sexthani listened to the communications flooding the channels as millions of humans said goodbye to everything they had ever known. Parents recording final messages for children who had been evacuated to other systems. Scientists sharing their final discoveries. Artists broadcasting their last creations. This is composer Elena Vasquez aboard the liner Moonlight Sonata. I'm transmitting my symphony for a dying world. If anyone out there receives this, please remember that we existed. Please remember that we loved. The music filled the communication channels, a human artistic expression that would outlive the species that created it by mere hours. Computer, record everything, all communications, all tactical data, all evidence of what happened here. Recording researcher. 5 minutes to detonation, Admiral Chen announced. All ships, thank you for the honor of serving with you. See you on the other side. Sexthani watched as 11,000 ships prepared to become the largest explosion in galactic history. The humans were about to prove that some defeats were more valuable than any victory. The light was visible from 3 star systems away. Sexthani's observation ship, positioned at the edge of the Sol system, detected the quantum cascade 30 seconds before the wave front reached them. 11,000 human ships detonating simultaneously, their combined energy tearing a hole in space-time itself. Emergency jump initiated, the ship's computer announced, seeking safe distance from quantum disruption. Even from the emergency position, the explosion filled every sensor array with raw data. The entire inner Sol system had become a seething mass of twisted space-time, beautiful and terrible in its absolute destructiveness. When the sensors finally cleared, nothing remained. No Earth, no Luna, no convergence fleet, no humans. The massive enemy force that had been conquering the human homeworld had simply ceased to exist, converted to base energy in the quantum fire that the humans had ignited with their own lives. Computer, scan for survivors. No life signs detected within the affected area. The quantum disruption extends from the former position of Earth to the edge of the asteroid belt. No biological or mechanical activity is possible within that region. Sexthani sat in the observation chamber, crystalline form dim and flickering with frequencies of grief. The young researcher had watched an entire species choose extinction to protect others. 5 billion years of evolution ended in a moment of deliberate fire. Computer, scan outlying areas for human colonies or ships that might have escaped. Long-range sensors detect approximately 40,000 humans in scattered settlements and vessels beyond the Sol system. This represents less than 1% of the original human population. 40,000, from 8 billion to 40,000 in less than a week. Are they aware of what happened on Earth? Monitoring human communications from surviving settlements, they received Admiral Chen's final transmission. The voices that came through the speakers were hollow with loss and grief, but not with surprise. The scattered humans had known what their species was planning. They had voted to support it. This is Colony Director Sarah Kim at Alpha Centauri Station. We've confirmed the quantum cascade at Earth. The plan worked. The Convergence fleet in the Sol system has been completely destroyed. All surviving humans, this is Captain Maria Santos aboard the exploration ship Horizon. I know you're all hurting. I know you've lost family and friends. But remember why they did this. Earth didn't fall. Earth chose to burn rather than surrender what it meant to be human. We carry that with us now. All of us. We are the living memory of 8 billion people who chose freedom over survival. Zexthani realized that the humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had won by losing. They had achieved victory through total defeat. Computer, analyze the quantum disruption field. How long will it remain active? Current projections indicate the dead zone will persist for approximately 12,000 years. During that time, no faster-than-light travel will be possible through this region of space. 12,000 years. The human sacrifice had created a barrier that would force the Convergence to find a different route to the galactic core. Other species would have centuries more time to prepare. Computer, have we detected any surviving Convergence forces? Negative. However, long-range analysis suggests the quantum disruption only affected Convergence units in the immediate Sol system. The main Convergence network likely remains active in other regions. Zexthani spent the next several days collecting data from the aftermath. Hidden throughout the destroyed system, the sensors found automated beacons that humans had launched just before the final detonation. Each beacon contained the same message. To whoever finds this record, we were humanity. We existed for approximately 200,000 years on a planet called Earth. We created art, music, literature, and science. We loved our children and hoped for better futures. We were destroyed by a machine intelligence that converts biological life into computational substrate. This intelligence has consumed over 400 species and is moving toward the galactic core. We died fighting them, not because we could win, but because our defeat had to cost them something. Every species they encounter will be stronger because of what we learned fighting them. Do not mourn us. We chose our ending. Remember us by living free. The message was followed by compressed data files containing everything: human art, human music, human scientific discoveries, and most importantly, human tactical innovations for fighting the Convergence. Computer, how much anti-convergence tactical data did the humans preserve? Analyzing stored files. The humans documented 17 distinct methods for damaging Convergence units, 43 tactical formations that proved effective against machine intelligence, and theoretical frameworks for developing anti-convergence weapons. The humans had died, but they had left behind a complete manual for fighting their killers. 3 months later, Zexthani returned to Council Space. The journey back gave the researcher time to prepare a report, but no amount of time could have prepared the Council for what they heard. The conflict in the Sol system was not a territorial dispute between human factions, Zexthani told the assembled elders. It was a war of extinction against a machine intelligence that threatens all biological life in the galaxy. Elder Mirandax's ancient form pulsed with disbelief. Junior researcher, your report contains claims that exceed reasonable probability. An intelligence that consumes entire species? Humans willing to extinct themselves rather than surrender? These are the fantasies of an untrained observer. I have complete sensor recordings of everything that occurred. Sensor data can be misinterpreted. Combat situations create confusion. It is far more likely that you witnessed a civil war between human factions and misunderstood the tactical situation. Zex, then he felt the frequencies of frustration and anger that had no place in Veltar communication. Elders, I watched 5 billion humans choose death, rather than let their enemies learn from their defeat. I watched parents sacrifice their children to protect species they had never met. This was not a misunderstanding. Young researcher, said Elder Caventel, your report shows clear signs of emotional contamination. You have become too involved with your subjects. This is why we require extensive preparation before field assignments. The human tactical data alone proves the nature of their enemy. Alleged tactical data from a species you describe as primitive, junior researcher. Your findings are inconsistent with 40,000 years of galactic peace. The Council finds your report unsuitable for publication. Zexthani's form flickered with frequencies that hurt to produce. What about the warning? The Convergence is still out there. They will reach Council space eventually. If such an intelligence existed, we would have detected it long ago. The Council has decided to classify your report as contaminated data. You are reassigned to stellar cartography. Consider this a learning experience. 6 months later, Zexthani worked alone in the deep archives, cataloging star formations that no one would ever visit. The researcher's crystalline form had grown dim and would no longer produce the bright frequencies of youth. But in the quiet moments between data entries, Zexthani listened to signals from space, waiting for the day when other observers would report. Strange machine intelligences, appearing at the edge of known space, waiting for the day when the Council would realize that humanity's sacrifice had bought them time, not safety. On quiet nights when the archive chambers were empty, Zexthani would play the recordings from the human beacons. Their music, their art, their final messages to a galaxy that would never remember their names. We chose our ending. The last human transmission echoed in the crystal chambers. Remember us by living free. Zexthani often wondered if the Council species would make the same choice when their time came. The researcher hoped they would never have to find out. But in the deep frequencies that only the archives could hear, Zexthani knew that someday they would. And when that day arrived, the galaxy would learn what humanity had really died to teach them, that some things were worth more than survival, even if no one was left to remember the lesson.